chosen one. They're begging him to warn you. But he just grinned and said, "Too late. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now." There are moments in life when everything you believed was hidden suddenly begins revealing itself, not because the world has changed overnight, but because your eyes are finally opening to what heaven has been trying to show you all along. If this message found you today, don't dismiss it as coincidence. Sit with it for a moment. Let your spirit become still. Because what you're about to hear isn't meant to stir fear, it is meant to awaken courage. Somewhere beyond the noise of everyday life, beyond the opinions of people who never truly understood your purpose, a conversation has already taken place. A conversation about you. They thought they had more time. They believed they could keep delaying the truth, keep hiding behind masks, keep pretending your season would never arrive. But everything shifted the moment heaven declared that your waiting was over. That's when panic spread through places you cannot see with your physical eyes. That's when voices that once laughed in confidence suddenly began whispering with uncertainty. Someone finally realized they had underestimated what was happening in your life. They begged for one more chance to stop what had already begun. They pleaded for someone to warn you before you discovered who you truly were. But the answer they received wasn't what they expected. A quiet smile appeared. Then came two words that echoed like thunder through every plan built against your future: too late. Have you ever wondered why you've survived situations that should have broken you? Why doors kept opening after everyone assured you they never would? Why every setback somehow became the very thing that prepared you for something greater? It wasn't luck. It wasn't accident. Every painful chapter carried hidden training. Every disappointment strengthened something inside you that success never could. While others saw delay, heaven saw development. While people assumed you had been forgotten, your character was being forged where no applause could distract you. You were learning endurance when nobody noticed. You were discovering faith when nothing made sense. You were becoming the person your future required before your future ever arrived. That is why this season feels different. The pressure you've been feeling isn't proof you're losing. Sometimes pressure is simply the sound of old chains breaking apart. Sometimes confusion appears just before clarity enters the room. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough begins disguised as the greatest challenge. Don't mistake resistance for defeat. Resistance often confirms that you're moving in the right direction. There are people who built opinions about you years ago and never updated them. They still speak about the version of you that doubted yourself, the version that apologized for existing, the version that stayed silent to keep everyone comfortable. They don't realize that person no longer exists. Quietly, without announcing it to anyone, you've been changing. The lessons became wisdom. The tears became discernment. The heartbreak became compassion. The loneliness became strength. You didn't transform because life became easier. You transformed because you stopped expecting easy and started embracing purpose. That is the difference between surviving and becoming. Many can survive difficult seasons. Few allow those seasons to reshape them into someone capable of carrying greater responsibility. Heaven often prepares its strongest people in private places before introducing them to public purpose. Some people are uncomfortable because your peace exposes their chaos. They cannot understand how you continue smiling after everything you've endured. They expected bitterness, but found kindness. They expected revenge, but witnessed forgiveness. They expected collapse, but instead watched you stand taller than before. What they never understood is that true strength isn't loud. It doesn't need constant recognition. Real strength grows quietly beneath the surface until one day everyone suddenly notices what has been developing all along. Like roots beneath an ancient tree, your unseen growth has been supporting a future that is finally ready to emerge. Have you noticed how certain relationships began changing recently? Conversations feel different. Some people have become strangely distant while others unexpectedly appear offering encouragement. Don't ignore those shifts. Every season requires different companions. Not everyone assigned to your yesterday belongs in your tomorrow. Sometimes people leave because their role in your story has already been completed. Sometimes new people arrive carrying opportunities disguised as ordinary conversations. Discernment is learning not to chase every person who walks away or question every door that closes. Instead, trust that what genuinely belongs in your purpose will never require you to betray your values to keep it. The truth is that many battles are won long before they become visible. Think about a seed planted beneath the soil. For weeks, nothing appears above the ground. Anyone looking from the outside assumes nothing is happening. Yet beneath the surface, roots are stretching, foundations are forming, life is quietly preparing for the moment it finally breaks through. Your life has followed that same pattern. There were seasons when you questioned whether your prayers mattered because visible evidence seemed absent. But unseen growth was taking place. Character was deepening. Wisdom was expanding. Timing was aligning. The harvest could never appear before the roots became strong enough to support it. There is something powerful about reaching the point where you no longer need everyone to understand your journey. Earlier in life, criticism wounded you because you believed other people's approval defined your worth. But somewhere along the way, you discovered something liberating. Purpose doesn't require unanimous agreement. Vision isn't validated by popular opinion. The people who laughed at Noah before the rain came didn't change the weather. The brothers who underestimated Joseph couldn't cancel his destiny. The giant who mocked David didn't prevent the victory that history would remember forever. Every generation contains voices that underestimate those who have been quietly prepared for extraordinary assignments. Don't measure your future according to someone else's limited imagination. Maybe you've been asking why certain dreams took longer than expected. Maybe you've wondered whether you missed your opportunity or made too many mistakes. Listen carefully. Delay is not always denial. Sometimes timing protects what impatience would destroy. Imagine receiving responsibilities before your character was ready to carry them. Imagine achieving success before humility had been developed. Imagine influence arriving before wisdom matured. What appears slow from our perspective often reveals extraordinary precision from heaven's perspective. Every chapter has prepared you for the next one. Nothing has been wasted. Not even your failures. Especially not your failures. They taught lessons success rarely offers. There is also another reason this message found you today. You have reached a point where fear can no longer be your advisor. Fear always speaks with urgency. It tells you to quit before trying, hide before growing, settle before risking disappointment. But purpose speaks differently. Purpose whispers with quiet confidence. It invites rather than pressures. It strengthens rather than intimidates. It reminds you that courage isn't the absence of fear, it is choosing faith despite uncertainty. Every meaningful step you've ever taken required leaving something familiar behind. Every breakthrough demanded trust before evidence appeared. That pattern hasn't changed. Your next season will require the same courage that carried you through every previous one. Some people assume chosen individuals never struggle. That couldn't be further from the truth. Those entrusted with meaningful assignments often experience seasons of profound testing because strength develops through resistance, not comfort. The mountain climber grows stronger because the path is steep. The athlete improves because training challenges every muscle. Gold becomes refined through intense heat. None of those processes feel pleasant while they're happening. Yet each one produces something impossible to achieve any other way. Don't resent every difficult chapter. Ask what wisdom it is producing inside you. Ask what qualities are being strengthened that comfort could never create. As you move through the coming days, pay attention to small moments. Great change rarely begins with dramatic announcements. It often begins with a conversation you almost skipped, an opportunity that seemed ordinary, a decision that felt insignificant at first. Stay present. Stay grateful. Stay teachable. Heaven often hides extraordinary beginnings inside ordinary days. Those who remain attentive recognize opportunities that distracted people overlook. And remember this above all else, the words, "too late," are not a declaration of hopelessness for you. They are a declaration that fear, doubt, and every force trying to keep you trapped no longer have the final say over your story. Their opportunity to define your future has passed. Your future will be shaped instead by faith, perseverance, wisdom, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have grown stronger than the battles you once feared. The chapter ahead will not look like the chapter behind you, because you are no longer the same person who entered this journey. You have changed. Your vision has changed. Your courage has changed. And sometimes, that single transformation is enough to alter everything that follows. So don't scroll away believing this was just another message. Carry it with you today. Let it remind you that every setback prepared you, every delay strengthened you, and every unseen victory has been leading toward a moment that is closer than you think. The smile that answered, "Too late," was never about celebrating someone else's defeat. It was about declaring that your season of becoming has already begun, and nothing can undo the growth that has taken root inside you. The moment those words echoed, "too late," something shifted that no one could reverse. It wasn't because every obstacle suddenly disappeared or because every unanswered question instantly found an explanation. It was because a decision had already been made deep within your spirit. The version of you that once doubted every step had quietly faded away, replaced by someone who had learned that purpose is never built on comfort. Don't scroll. Stay with this message because your heart needs this right now. There are people who still believe they understand your story, but they only remember the chapters where you struggled. They continue speaking about your past because they never noticed that heaven was writing a completely different ending. While they focused on your delays, your preparation continued. While they celebrated too early, believing your greatest opportunities had passed, unseen doors were already unlocking one after another. That is why they became desperate. They realized something that you had not fully recognized yet, that your greatest strength was never your talent, your resources, or even your experience. Your greatest strength was your willingness to keep moving when nothing around you made sense. Most people stop one step before breakthrough because discouragement convinces them that silence means abandonment. But every season of silence carries hidden lessons. During those quiet moments, wisdom grows where applause cannot distract it. Character develops where recognition cannot corrupt it. Faith becomes genuine because it learns to stand without constant reassurance. Those who begged for someone to warn you misunderstood one important truth. They believed knowledge alone could stop your purpose. They assumed that if fear reached your heart before faith did, everything heaven had prepared would collapse. But they underestimated how much you had already changed. They remembered the person who questioned every challenge, but they never met the person you quietly became through years of perseverance. That is why their plans began falling apart long before you noticed. Every attempt to discourage you only strengthened your resolve. Every rejection redirected you toward something greater. Every disappointment taught you to depend less on temporary approval and more on lasting truth. Think back to every season when you felt forgotten. There were nights when you asked questions that seemed to disappear into silence. There were mornings when hope felt heavier than despair because believing required more courage than giving up. Yet even then, something inside refused to surrender completely. That quiet determination wasn't accidental. It was evidence that purpose had already taken root. Seeds never argue with the darkness surrounding them because they understand something the surface cannot see. Growth often begins where visibility ends. While everything above the ground appears empty, life is expanding beneath it. Your journey has followed that same pattern. The invisible work has always been the most important work. Before influence comes integrity. Before opportunity comes preparation. Before elevation comes humility. Heaven never rushes foundations because everything built afterward depends upon them. Imagine constructing a towering building on unstable ground. No matter how beautiful the structure appears from a distance, eventually every weakness hidden beneath the surface becomes impossible to ignore. Your delays protected you from that outcome. They gave your foundation time to become strong enough to carry the future waiting ahead. Some people became impatient because they measured your life according to visible progress. They counted promotions, possessions, recognition, and applause. But heaven measures differently. It counts compassion developed through suffering. It notices forgiveness offered without recognition. It values integrity practiced when compromise would have been easier. Those unseen victories are the ones that shape lasting influence. Anyone can appear strong during easy seasons. True strength reveals itself when kindness survives disappointment and hope survives delay. That is exactly what has been happening within you. You may not have noticed every change because transformation rarely announces itself. One day you simply realize that situations which once controlled your emotions no longer possess the same power. Opinions that once defined your confidence suddenly become background noise. Dreams that once seemed impossible begin feeling strangely attainable. This isn't coincidence. It is evidence that your perspective has matured. The greatest miracle is often not a changed circumstance but a changed heart. Once your heart changes, your response to every circumstance changes as well. There is another truth you need to hear today. Not everyone who walks beside you is walking toward the same destination. Some relationships exist only for specific seasons. Their purpose was never to remain forever. Holding on to expired connections often delays fresh opportunities. That does not mean becoming bitter or suspicious. It simply means recognizing that every chapter introduces different companions. Some teach lessons. Others provide encouragement. A few become lifelong partners in purpose. Wisdom is learning to appreciate each relationship without forcing every relationship to last forever. You are entering a season where clarity will replace confusion. Conversations that once felt complicated will become surprisingly simple. Doors that required endless effort may quietly close while unexpected opportunities open with remarkable peace. Don't resist those shifts. Sometimes the easiest path isn't the one requiring the least effort but the one aligned with your purpose. Peace is often a better guide than pressure. If you constantly have to become someone else to fit through a particular door, perhaps that door was never meant for you. The opportunities prepared for your future will require growth but never demand that you abandon your values. That distinction matters more than you realize. There are moments coming when you'll remember this message. At first they may seem ordinary, a chance encounter, an unexpected phone call, an idea that refuses to leave your thoughts, a conversation that changes how you see your future. Many overlook these moments because they expect destiny to arrive with dramatic signs. More often, purpose whispers before it shouts. It invites before it commands. It asks for one faithful step instead of revealing the entire journey at once. Trust those quiet invitations. Every meaningful story begins with small acts of courage repeated consistently over time. Don't compare your progress to someone else's timeline. Every assignment has its own season. The oak tree and the wildflower both fulfill meaningful purposes, yet they grow according to completely different rhythms. One blooms quickly and disappears within weeks. The other spends years developing roots before reaching its full height. Neither process is wrong. Your journey cannot be measured by another person's calendar. The only comparison worth making is between who you were yesterday and who you are becoming today. When you look honestly, you'll realize you've already traveled farther than you once believed possible. The fears that controlled you no longer possess the same authority. The dreams you almost abandoned have quietly returned with greater clarity. The compassion born from your hardships now allows you to encourage others facing similar battles. Nothing has been wasted. Every scar has become a lesson. Every delay has become preparation. Every unanswered prayer has shaped the person capable of carrying the blessings that are drawing closer with every passing day. So when you hear those words echo again, too late, remember what they truly mean. They do not announce the defeat of people. They announce the end of fear's control over your future. They declare that doubt arrived too late to stop your growth, discouragement came too late to erase your purpose, and every attempt to convince you that your story was over arrived after heaven had already begun writing a new chapter. Walk into that chapter with humility, gratitude, and unwavering faith, because the greatest pages of your journey are still waiting to be written, and this time you will recognize the quiet miracles while they are unfolding instead of only after they have passed. Don't scroll just yet, because what happens next explains why your journey has felt so different from everyone else's. There are seasons when nothing seems to move, when every prayer feels like it rises into silence and every effort appears to disappear without producing visible results. Those are the moments when most people assume the story has ended. But what if those quiet seasons were never empty? What if they were the very place where your greatest transformation was taking place? This message is for you because your heart has carried questions that few people ever heard. You smiled while carrying burdens that would have caused others to quit. You encouraged people even while wondering who would encourage you. You celebrated other people's victories while quietly waiting for your own breakthrough. Heaven saw every one of those moments. None of them were ignored. None of them were forgotten. Every unseen act of faithfulness became another stone in the foundation of the future that was being prepared for you. That is why the words, "too late," continue to carry such extraordinary meaning. They were never spoken because your journey would suddenly become easy. They were spoken because the process that shaped you had already reached a point that could not be reversed. You cannot unlearn wisdom that hardship has taught you. You cannot erase the strength born through perseverance. You cannot return to being the person you were before you discovered that your identity was never meant to depend on people's opinions. Those who underestimated you thought they were fighting against your circumstances. They never realized they were actually confronting a purpose that had already been growing stronger through every challenge. Every delay they celebrated became another lesson you would later use to help someone else. Every rejection became another reminder that your worth was never determined by acceptance from the wrong places. Every disappointment redirected your steps toward something more aligned with who you were becoming. Looking back now, you can begin to recognize patterns that once felt random. The opportunities that disappeared made room for better ones. The people who walked away created space for relationships built on honesty instead of convenience. The dreams that seemed delayed were quietly being refined until they matched the person you were growing into. Nothing was as meaningless as it appeared in the moment. Every chapter carried purpose even when it carried pain. There is a reason mature trees survive storms that uproot younger ones. Their roots reach depths that cannot be seen from the surface. In the same way, your unseen seasons created stability that visible success alone could never produce. Many people admire fruit without appreciating roots. They celebrate outcomes while ignoring the years of quiet growth that made those outcomes possible. Heaven works differently. It always strengthens the roots before revealing the fruit. That is exactly what has happened in your life. While others measured progress by what they could see, heaven measured progress by what was developing inside you. Patience became stronger. Compassion became deeper. Discernment became sharper. Courage became quieter but more unshakable. These qualities cannot be purchased, borrowed, or imitated. They can only be developed through experience. That is why your journey could never be rushed. Imagine receiving every answer the moment you first asked every question. Imagine never experiencing uncertainty, disappointment, or waiting. You might gain comfort, but you would lose wisdom. Some lessons require time because character grows through process rather than instant results. The very struggles you once begged to escape have become the source of your greatest understanding. Today you can comfort others because you remember what loneliness felt like. You can speak hope because you remember seasons when hope was difficult to hold on to yourself. Your pain has not defined you, but it has prepared you. That preparation will become one of your greatest gifts. There are still people who believe your confidence appeared overnight. They see the calmness in your voice but never witness the battles that produced it. They admire your resilience but never saw the nights when you questioned whether you could continue. They assume your faith came easily because they were absent during the seasons when faith was all you had left. Never allow anyone to convince you that your growth was effortless. Honor the process that shaped you. Every tear mattered. Every difficult decision mattered. Every quiet victory mattered. They formed the person standing here today. As you move forward, another challenge will appear, not because you are failing but because growth always invites new responsibility. The next chapter of your journey will ask you to trust in ways you have never trusted before. It will invite you to walk through doors that feel larger than your current confidence. Do not mistake that feeling for weakness. Every meaningful opportunity carries an element of uncertainty. Courage is not waiting until fear disappears. Courage is taking the next faithful step while fear still whispers from the sidelines. You have done that before, and you will do it again. This time, however, something is different. You are no longer trying to prove your value to everyone around you. You are simply becoming faithful to the purpose placed within you. That shift changes everything. When your focus moves from seeking approval to living with integrity, distractions begin losing their power. Criticism no longer controls your emotions. Praise no longer becomes your addiction. You learn to remain steady whether the crowd applauds or remains silent. That steadiness is one of the greatest signs of maturity. Heaven entrusts greater influence to those who can remain humble in success and hopeful in difficulty. Keep protecting that balance. Never allow temporary victories to create pride or temporary disappointments to create despair. Both are passing seasons. Your purpose is far greater than either one. There is another reason this message has found you today. Someone reading these words has quietly believed they were too late for their own dreams. They think opportunities have already passed. They believe age, failure, regret, or previous mistakes have permanently closed every meaningful door. But listen carefully. Purpose does not operate according to human timelines. Some of history's greatest stories began after long seasons of apparent delay. What looked impossible became possible because the right moment finally arrived. The same truth applies to your life. Do not bury the dreams that continue returning to your heart. If they still bring peace instead of pride, perhaps they remain there for a reason. Nurture them with wisdom, patience, and consistent action. Small faithful steps repeated over time accomplish far more than dramatic bursts of emotion followed by surrender. Consistency has always been one of heaven's favorite tools. It transforms ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes. Continue choosing kindness even when it goes unnoticed. Continue choosing honesty when shortcuts seem easier. Continue choosing hope when cynicism appears fashionable. These decisions may feel small today, but they shape the future more powerfully than you realize. One day you will look back and recognize that your greatest victories did not begin with spectacular miracles. They began with ordinary moments when you quietly chose faith instead of fear, integrity instead of compromise, and perseverance instead of quitting. That is the true meaning behind the smile and the words, "Too late." Fear arrived too late to stop your transformation. Discouragement arrived too late to erase your calling. Every voice that declared your story was over arrived after heaven had already begun writing a new chapter that no one else could see. So keep walking. Keep growing. Keep trusting. You are closer to understanding the purpose behind every chapter than you have ever been before. The road ahead may still contain challenges, but it also carries promises that have been patiently waiting for the exact person you have now become. And because you chose not to give up during the hidden seasons, you are finally prepared to recognize the blessings that have been moving toward you all along. The truth that has been unfolding throughout this journey now becomes impossible to ignore. Don't scroll. Stay with this message because your heart needs this right now. There comes a moment in every chosen person's life when they stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That single shift changes everything. It transforms pain into preparation, delays into development, and uncertainty into expectation. Looking back, you can finally see that every chapter carried a purpose far greater than you realized while you were living through it. The doors that closed were never meant to imprison you. They redirected you. The disappointments that broke your expectations also broke your dependence on things that could never sustain your future. The people who misunderstood you unknowingly pushed you toward discovering your identity beyond human approval. Nothing was wasted. Not one tear. Not one unanswered question. Not one lonely night. Heaven has a remarkable way of weaving every experience together until even the hardest chapters begin revealing unexpected beauty. This is why the words, "Too late," still echo with such quiet confidence. They are not words of arrogance. They are words of completion. The season when fear could define your future has ended. The season when insecurity controlled your decisions has passed. The season when you believed every criticism more than every promise has quietly disappeared behind you. You may not feel completely fearless, but you are no longer controlled by fear. That is one of the greatest victories a person can experience. Courage does not erase uncertainty. It simply refuses to let uncertainty become the author of your story. Think about everything you once believed would destroy you. There were moments when heartbreak felt permanent, when rejection seemed unbearable, when waiting felt endless. Yet here you are. You survived every chapter that convinced you it would be your last. Not because you possessed extraordinary strength every single day, but because you kept taking one more step. One more prayer. One more act of faith. One more decision to keep believing that your story still mattered. Those small decisions accumulated into a life that is now stronger than the circumstances that once intimidated you. Never underestimate the power of quiet consistency. Great transformations rarely happen in one dramatic moment. They happen through thousands of faithful choices that nobody applauds until the results become impossible to ignore. There will always be people who only notice the harvest without appreciating the seasons of planting. They will admire your peace without understanding the battles that taught it. They will celebrate your confidence without recognizing the years of uncertainty that shaped it. Do not become frustrated by that misunderstanding. Your responsibility has never been to convince everyone how difficult your journey was. Your responsibility is simply to remain faithful to the person you have become because of that journey. The strongest testimony often requires no explanation. A changed life speaks louder than endless arguments. As you move into this next season, protect your peace with the same determination you once protected your dreams. Peace is not weakness. Peace is not passivity. Peace is the confidence that comes from knowing you no longer have to control every outcome. You have learned that some doors open through effort while others open through timing. Wisdom is recognizing the difference. Continue working diligently, but release the burden of believing everything depends entirely upon you. There is freedom in doing your part while trusting that the rest will unfold in the proper season. This freedom allows you to enjoy today's blessings instead of constantly worrying about tomorrow's uncertainties. Gratitude becomes easier when your heart is no longer trapped by fear. There is another lesson waiting at the end of this message. Forgive yourself for the years you spent believing you were behind. Forgive yourself for comparing your journey with people whose assignments were never meant to resemble your own. Comparison steals joy because it ignores purpose. Two lives can appear completely different while both are unfolding exactly as they should. Stop measuring your progress according to someone else's calendar. The path prepared for you has always required its own timing. Every delay carried hidden protection. Every waiting season carried unseen preparation. Every apparent detour quietly positioned you for opportunities that could never have been reached by the road you originally wanted. One day, the route that once confused you will become the very testimony that encourages someone else not to give up. That is how hope multiplies. It passes from one life to another through stories of perseverance. Perhaps the greatest surprise of your journey is this. The victory was never simply reaching a destination. The victory was becoming the kind of person capable of carrying that destination with humility, wisdom, and compassion. Success without character often destroys people. Influence without integrity eventually collapses. But a heart refined through patience becomes capable of handling blessings without losing itself. That has been the deeper work taking place all along. Heaven was never interested only in changing your circumstances. It was shaping your character because your character will outlast every temporary achievement. Carry that understanding with you as new opportunities appear. Welcome success with gratitude instead of pride. Receive recognition with humility instead of entitlement. Celebrate progress without forgetting the lessons learned during hidden seasons. Those lessons will continue guiding you long after applause fades away. There may still be difficult days ahead. Chosen people are not promised lives without challenges. They are promised strength for each season, wisdom for each decision, and hope that refuses to disappear even when the path grows unfamiliar. When new obstacles appear, remember what this journey has already taught you. You have overcome things that once seemed impossible. You have grown through circumstances that once appeared unbearable. The same faithfulness that carried you before will continue carrying you forward. Do not allow temporary setbacks to erase the permanent truths you have learned. Return often to gratitude. Return often to stillness. Return often to hope. Those practices will anchor you when emotions attempt to drift toward fear again. And now the meaning behind that mysterious smile becomes completely clear. When they begged for someone to warn you, believing there was still time to stop your purpose, the answer was simply, too late. Too late because your identity was no longer fragile. Too late because your faith had already taken root. Too late because your character had already been strengthened through seasons nobody else understood. Too late because every attempt to discourage you had unintentionally prepared you for greater resilience. Too late because the person standing today is not the same person who began this journey. That old version lived by fear, hesitation, and constant approval seeking. This new version walks with quiet confidence, deeper wisdom, and a heart that understands purpose is built one faithful step at a time. So walk forward without carrying yesterday's limitations into tomorrow's opportunities. Release the weight of old disappointments. Let go of voices that no longer deserve space in your thoughts. Continue becoming the person your future has been patiently waiting to meet. Every sunrise is another reminder that new beginnings remain possible. Every breath is another reminder that your story is still being written. Every act of courage, no matter how small, becomes another sentence in a testimony that will encourage lives you may never even meet. This message found you for a reason. Not to convince you that life will never be difficult again, but to remind you that difficulty no longer has the authority to define you. The smile that answered, "Too late," was the quiet declaration that your season of becoming could no longer be undone. Walk in that truth. Live with that hope. And remember that the greatest chapters of your life are not the ones where everything was easy. They are the ones where you discovered who you truly were, remained faithful through every season, and stepped into your future with a heart that had learned to trust even when it could not yet see the entire path ahead. That is where true victory begins, and that is the journey that continues from this day forward.